Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's webinar, info session and alumni panel for the CEIBS Global Executive MBA program. Thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Marcel Austin Martin. I am Senior Manager for Marketing and Admissions for the Global EMBA program. Very happy to be here this evening as your host and MC for this evening's webinar. We have people dialing in from, I think, well, many here in China, also other parts of Asia, Europe, Africa, and the US. So good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. We do hope that you are safe and well as we all go through this extraordinary time. We have a really fantastic webinar for you this evening. We're going to hear from 4 panelists, all of whom have gone through the CEIBS Global EMBA program and really have different perspectives on that. It's a really good chance for you to hear their own insights on the program. Before the alumni panel begins, I'm going to give a sort of a 10-minute introduction just about the CEIBS Global EMBA program. Then we'll go into the alumni panel. I'll invite our alumni to join at that point. Probably just under an hour, we'll run through the panel, and then we'll have a chance for questions from the audience. So any of you who would like to pose questions, we have disabled chat to our audience tonight. So please, if you would like to submit some questions, and we really welcome your questions, please do so through the Q&A function on Zoom. Really encourage you to do so. Don't feel you need to wait until the Q&A section to submit those questions. We can collect them as we go through, and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible before the end of the session. That's 8:45 this evening, China time. So just to show you who our panelists are that we have coming up in a few minutes. As I say, 4 fantastic alumni that we have, all have gone through the CEIBS Global EMBA program from different years, all the way back from 2010 all the way up to 2017, which is our most recent graduating class who graduated last year. So really from different backgrounds, different nationalities, different industries, and from different classes. So a real chance to hear from them about their experience on the program. But before I ask them to join us, I am going to talk a little bit about the school, about the Global EMBA program. So our school, China Europe International Business School, this is, as the name suggests, we are a joint venture between China and Europe. We've been around for over 25 years. We celebrated our 25-year anniversary last year. And we've grown very quickly. So I'm here in Shanghai at the moment, but we have campuses also in Beijing, Shenzhen, here in China, and 2 campuses around the world, in Zurich and in Accra in West Africa and Ghana. So quite a global footprint developing for the school. And we really are the most widely recognized business school in China. Our Global EMBA program, which is what we're talking about this evening, is ranked 5th in the world, and that was the most recent Financial Times ranking from last year. And our full-time program is also actually ranked top 5 in the world as well, and fully accredited by AACSB and EQUIS. So as with any good business school, the strength really begins with our faculty. And it's just a small sample of some of the professors who have taught on the Global EMBA program here. And we really try and bridge between the China and the global side here. So you'll see 2 fantastic professors originally from China. That's Professor Ding Yuan and Professor Catherine Shin, who've spent many, many years teaching and studying and so on abroad. And then some of our foreign professors, most of whom are based right here in Shanghai. So they are here researching, teaching, and consulting, and so on. So they really get a very strong understanding of China and the Chinese economy as well. So a few of these professors might be familiar faces to our alumni who'll be on the panel later. As I mentioned, the CEIBS Global MBA has been ranked for the last 2 years number 5 by Financial Times, which is something we're very proud of. And that ranking, you can see, is number 5 globally, but is actually number 1 in mainland China, and is the number 1 ranked standalone program in Asia. There are many partnership programs, but ours is the top ranked standalone program in Asia. To look at how the program is sort of structured, so our program is part-time, of course, and it's through 20 months, okay? So every student will begin with what we call the opening residency module, which is focused on leadership and team building. So this is an 8-day module where we bring in executive coaches from around the world, and every student will be assigned an executive coach. There's a really, really strong kind of leadership grounding right from the very first module. And I'll definitely ask our alums to maybe share a little bit about their experience there. Then you'll go through your core courses for the first half of the program. And then there are some global modules in Zurich and in Barcelona, core global modules. And then we have the elective course, which is where you get the chance to really tailor your learning journey. And there are many electives here in China, but we also have global electives in 7 different locations around the world. And then you conclude with your exit module, which again is a chance to sort of reflect back on the 20 months of learning, but also a chance to reflect on your development as a leader as well. Every student completes what's called a capstone project, which is throughout the last 9 or 10 months of the program. And this is a chance to really integrate all the different learning that you've had and to really apply it to a real business problem in the capstone project. So what does that look like here? The program, as I say, is 20 months long, and we begin towards the end of October. It is part-time, but you do need to spend some time out of the office. So we estimate around about 45 days is required out of the office over the 20-month program. Very rigorous academic program at around about 600 classroom hours. There's some 12 core courses, around about 4 to 7 electives, and every student on this program will participate in a minimum of 4 global modules that's outside of China. So we have a flexible format as well. So you have the choice between studying for 4 days every month, or you can study for 8 or 9 days every 2 months. So we provide that flexibility so you're able to pick a track that suits your own kind of work schedule and so on. So to give you a look at how those 2 tracks work. So if you look down the left-hand side, which is what we call single module track, this is the option for people who want to take 4 days every month. So you can see just about every month there down the left-hand side, you'll be doing 4-day modules, most of which take place in Shanghai. Then on the right-hand side is what we call double module track, and that's for people who are choosing to come every 2 months for around about 9 days for each module. So you see that the double module track has a little bit more time overseas, and it has an additional core module outside of China that's in Accra, where we have a campus. It's a fantastic module that takes place there. Now, all the bars you can see in gold, these are modules where both tracks are all together. So there's a lot of chance, no matter which track you pick, to kind of connect with the other track as you go through the learning journey. And all electives, local and global electives, are all mixed between the 2 tracks. So we really think of it as one program with 2 different tracks is the best way to think of it. This is a look at our class profile. This is our most recent intake. They started in November last year, the 2019 class. So we had over 100 students. And you can see there that our global EMBA students are very experienced executives, average age of 40 years with 15 years of work experience on average. And it's worth bearing in mind that these are averages. So we do have people from early 30s all the way through to people into their late 40s, even in early 50s in some cases. But pretty consistently year on year, that averages out at about 40 years old. So it's generally people who are mid to senior stage in their career looking for a further kind of career boost. It's a very diverse class, and our most recent numbers here, we had 45% international participants, 43% female, and 20 different countries that are represented. Now, Shanghai is our home, and just over half the students are based here, but a really good number are based in different parts of China and indeed from all around the world. And I think while these are our numbers, I think actually you're going to get an even better example of what the class profile is like when you see our alumni in just a moment. So if you are interested in applying for the program, as I say, this year we begin late October, and there are 4 admission rounds, 2 of which have passed already, but there's still 2 rounds to go. So still plenty of time to consider an application for this year. And you need to use these dates as kind of planning for your application. Everyone is required to do an admission test. And we recommend all applicants to take what's called the executive assessment. This is done either in a testing center that GMAC, that's the company, a testing center that they operate. But actually, due to the current COVID-19 situation, many of these testing centers have been temporarily shut, but fortunately, they have developed a sort of an interim online version of this test. So wherever you are, if you're outside of mainland China, you are able to do an online version of that test. And I'd be happy to answer some questions if anyone has them about that later. The last step in the application process is your admission interview, very important part of the test. And this is usually conducted here in Shanghai, but if you are based outside of Shanghai, we can conduct this interview via Zoom or video conference as well. And after that, within around about 2 weeks, we are able to give you an admission decision. So that is the application process for if you want to consider this year. So that's just a very brief intro of our program. And I do now want to invite our 4 lovely alumni to please join the conversation, turn on your audio and your video. So we have 4 alumni for you this evening. Louise Vogler from Global MBA 2010, Lee Boer from Global MBA 2014, Irene Dai from Global EMBA 2017, and Klaus Toxby from Global EMBA 2016. I think, is everyone here? Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Great to see you all, and thank you for joining us this evening. So as I say, I'm going to got a series of questions for our panelists that I'll run through in probably just under an hour. A reminder to our audience, please feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A function. And from around about 8:10 or so in about an hour's time, we'll do our best to get through as many of the audience questions as we can. But for now, let's turn to our panelists. And I might just, I think so our audience has a bit more of an idea about the 4 of you. I might ask each of you, if you would, to just introduce a little bit about yourself, the organization that you're working for now, your position, and what your role is within that organization. So perhaps, Louise, you're our alumni from nearly 10 years back now. So perhaps, Louise, if you might kick us off.
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Marcel. So good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Louise Vogler. I've lived and worked in the Greater China area for over 20 years, so a long time in the region. I've been with Standard Chartered Bank, which is a British bank emerging markets institution for 21 years now. And I'm now managing director heading up our financial institutions business for Greater China, based in Hong Kong at the moment. So my team look after our relationships with banks and securities companies and insurance companies and funds and private equity funds and sponsors. So it's a real fun business. And I run a team of about 60 relationship managers who look after providing banking solutions to these clients. So that's a bit of background about me. And I did my Global MBA back in 2010. So I've got 10 years of experience to share with you post that EMBA.
Great. Thank you very much, Louise. Let's continue maybe with Lee Boer from Gemba 14. Hi, Boer.
Hi. Hey, Marcel. Hey, hello, everyone. My name is Bo. I'm the co-founder and CEO of RealWare. It's a tech startup company. We're based out of Shanghai. I'm sitting in my office here, but also a demo room. And we started the business in 2018, late 2018. We focus on industrial IoT, providing AR solutions to industrial customers and enterprise customers. We have been running the business for a little bit over a year, and the business has been growing very good. And we're looking at to close our first fundraising pretty soon. Before that, I was with a couple different global companies. I see a lot of you have similar background, taking executive positions with 3M and Johnson Control and General Electric. Started off as a technologist, spent many years in school, got a PhD from Carnegie Mellon. So I'm happy to share my experience and answer any questions during the session.
Thank you, Boer. Let's continue on. Irene, if you could introduce a little bit about yourself to get us started.
Good evening, everyone. This is Irene from EMBA 17, and I worked in P&G China for 15 years and for Omni retail business. Glad to see you here.
Great,
I think
thank
we
you,
can
Irene.
talk more later.
Okay, great, thank you. And Klaus.
Hi, everyone. My name is Klaus. I'm originally from Denmark, but have, like Louise, been in China or Asia for a couple of decades almost. Currently, I work for a company called Aranco, and it's probably the exact opposite of what Boer talked about. This company is from 1877, so we had our first funding round a while back, and we do industrial machinery. Among other things, we do packaging machines, we do machines, many others. I will not bore you with that, but maybe some of you, when you drink your juice in the morning, you see the company Tetra Pak logo, a triangle. The machines that they use to put what's in the cans, so to speak, or in the cartons, they are made by Aranco for many years now. So yeah, that's me.
Great. Okay. Thank you to the four of you. So let's get started then. So I want to, if I can, to take you back in time, back to before you joined CEIBS and before you joined the Global MBA program. And just tell us a little bit about, why you decided to join or felt you needed an EMBA, and how you came to arrive at that decision for CEIBS. So maybe, Irene, you're our most recent graduate, so maybe we could start
I'm
with you.
fractional here. Okay, I can start first. First of all, before I choose an EMBA program, I'm considering what I'm going to experience in my second half of my life. And to be honest, I think I'm in a midlife transition. I'm frustrating. So I just want to explore more in my life and in the world. So that's the reason why I decided to take an EMBA program. And why CEIBS? I think that's a long story because I almost used 2 years before I made my final decision to join CEIBS, to join EMBA program. I think in the first stage, I'm considering a program in US, a full-time master degree of business. And then I decided not to go to US to take a full-time program because I think learning by doing in EMBA program is very important. So I deselect US school. And second stage is for Hong Kong-based school because a lot of top-ranked EMBA program located in Hong Kong. And I even went to Hong Kong for the sample class. And eventually, I decided to deselect school and the program in Hong Kong. The reason is I do believe that the development of China really is really in mainland China, especially in Shanghai. And the second is I find that the people are quite similar in the program in Hong Kong. A lot of them are bankers. So I'm seeking for a program with real diversity. So that's the second phase. I deselect the program in Hong Kong. And then I apply to schools in mainland China, and I go to the sample class as well. And I think the interaction in EMBA program really impressed me. So I take the offer from EMBA. So that's the story of mine.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Irene. Let's continue to move back in time. So Klaus, you're from EMBA 16. So probably going back 5 years or so now. What led to your decision, and what were you thinking, and what were you looking for?
Yeah, as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm not Chinese, as you can probably see, but have been working most of my adult life in China, and actually have a master's degree from Europe before. So coming to China, having worked in different executive positions for more than a decade, I felt there was a need for me to try to understand more about China. And also, as Irene said, I mean, this is where it happens. So how do I get to the next level? That for me was very, very important in, let's say, sharpening the saw, moving on to the next level in my career. In terms of choosing CEIBS, well, I lived walking distance from the campus, so that was easy. Joking aside, I took the sample classes. I investigated many options, and I found that CEIBS deep dive into China is unparalleled, and that was the right thing for me. Many of the other partner schools have faculty flying in, and asking them to talk about China is a little bit pointless, because the situation here changes so fast. If you're not based here, you don't know what's really going on. So while I did discover or look at other schools, it was a relatively easy decision for me. I also had the benefit of knowing an alum from the school that simply couldn't stop talking about how great it was. So yeah, here I am doing the same.
Fantastic. Thank you, Klaus. And back to Boer. You were from, class started in 2014. How did you arrive at that decision, and what were you looking for?
Sure. Back then, certainly my own situation is I was an engineering director, although I see people running business, but no real experience from a general management position. That's sort of the path me and my former bosses be discussing, to transition from an engineering role to a business role. So certainly there is a need for a MBA or MBA equivalent program, and certainly I can't take off from my work, and EMBA is a no-brainer. And what I'm looking for back then probably has two elements that I focus on most. One is I do need to learn, right? So the knowledge part is important. So I look at all the academic evaluations online, and certainly CEIBS stands out, not just in China, but also globally, Asia Pacific as well. And the other part is the network. I feel I'm in Shanghai, and this is probably the best EMBA network you can have. And therefore, I didn't really interview other school. I just say, let's go CEIBS, and that's what I've done.
Fantastic. Thank you, Boer. And Louise, going all the way back to, well, before 2010, what were your thoughts at the time, and how did you arrive at this conclusion?
Yeah, well, for me, I think it's a bit of a similar story. I had hit, well, for me, a bit of a career plateau. So I felt I needed a challenge. And then looking at schools, I also had, similar to Klaus, I had a very respected colleague who had just finished the EMBA. And I really looked up to that individual, and she also spoke very highly of the program. So that, number one, attracted me to look at CEIBS. And already back then, like 10 years ago, CEIBS had a stellar reputation for academic rigor and a world-class faculty. So already sort of 10 years ago, quite well known for those aspects. And then lastly, again, it's in Shanghai. I was in Shanghai, had a young family, demanding job. It's just a little more convenient to do most of the classes in mainland China, whether it was on the Beijing campus, Shenzhen, or in Shanghai. So those were my considerations.
Great. Thank you all. One thing I find really interesting about the four of you that we have this evening is that I think all of you are in different roles or different companies, or both, from when you started the program. So you've obviously gone through some sort of transformation and a change in your career. And I think for our audience, one of the key considerations that people have is how is this EMBA going to help me in my career? How is it going to help my development? So I wonder if I could ask all of you, how did you develop, let's say, professionally as well as personally, sort of part one, and then if the program, whether it sort of helped in your career development and your sort of career transition in some cases. So let's start with Bork, because I know that you were working for a multinational when you started the program. You're now an entrepreneur and going through, as you say, your first round of funding. So could you run us through that and how that worked for you?
Yeah, certainly. I'm probably the one that has changed my past in the most dramatic way. I was taking a corporate role and career letter path, and this program really changed how I envision my future. And here I am. I'm become entrepreneur. I think the process happened that the start with, I didn't see I'm going to be a founder of a company at the beginning of the program. And as I started diving into the program and learning more about, certainly I've mentioned the academic knowledge, but also your colleagues, your classmates have a strong influence back to you as well. That's a part I didn't expect, or more than what I expected. Certainly we have classmates, we have people who either are in their way to become an entrepreneur, or they already start up their own business and being very successful. And it has been sort of my thought, right? It's just a thought when I started in 2014 that maybe I'll start my own business one day once I have all the knowledge. But the feeling that you have to be prepared, have learned everything to start is holding you back. But then I remember my former manager told me you can wait till next year to take the CEIBS program, but I would encourage you to do it right now. So that moment I realized if you want to do something, you just have to take the courage and to do it. Similarly, like I just, once of course my company paid for this, they said, hey, you got your funding to do the program. I just jumped into the program, encouraged by my manager and leader. And then after that, after all the discussions I had with my classmates, I said, well, I need to prepare myself to be an entrepreneur. That's what I'm thinking to do. And now you have the knowledge, experience, and it's just finding the right opportunity. And that happened in 2018. So I just started to do it. So fundamentally, it changed my way of thinking in terms of how to do something. As an engineer, you always feel like you have to prepare everything. Every piece has to be ready. But the program taught me that you don't have to. So.
Great, thank you, Boer. And Louise, obviously a different journey for you. I think you've been with Standard Chartered right from before, during, and after the program, but you've had a journey through China, Africa, and back again. Could you run us through your sort of professional and personal development and maybe the impact on your career?
Yeah, sure. I think professionally, there are two things that stand out to me that sort of changed and helped me along. I mean, the first, again, I've been in the same organization a long time, but have moved into very, very different roles. And I felt that through the EMBA experience, the focus on personal development and leadership development is really very valuable. For me as a banker, more so than some of the technical courses, because I already had a little bit of that under my belt. So I found the emphasis on really exploring your personal leadership styles and how you can then leverage on that knowledge to better lead a diverse group of people in multinational context. Those sort of things I found were really, really useful. So even to this day, sort of 10 years on, I use some of the same rubrics and frameworks in managing stakeholders and managing my teams. The second thing professionally, and I think we'll talk about this later on, I'm sure as well, is around the alumni network. And I've found over the last 10 years, and I've moved from this region into Africa and covered the Middle East. I've been in many places around the world, and I find CEIBS EMBA alumni everywhere. And it's amazing. There's this natural camaraderie when you introduce yourself and you find out you've got a CEIBS alumni at the other end of the table, there's this natural camaraderie and friendship that you strike up, and there's an immediate trust and willingness to sort of open up and look at business opportunities. So I think that's something that for me over the last 10 years has been really valuable from a professional perspective. And then lastly, personally, I think kind of echoes what Boer just said. I thought after completing, which is something that's a real personal milestone in one's life, I just felt a lot more personal confidence to take risks, including like moving to Africa, for instance, so, face challenges with confidence that, if you put your mind to it, you can get it through. You don't have to have everything already arranged. You can push yourself through and take yourself out of your comfort zone. So I think personally, I felt that really added a lot of value to my own life experience.
Fantastic. Thank you, Louise. I'll come to you, Irene. You've also, I understand, been with P&G from before and during and now after. How's your sort of professional development and career development and so on been impacted by the program?
Well, for me personally, I was get promoted in the middle of our Gemba journey. But most importantly, I think it's below the surface. I become a much better person to have qualities to pursue better selves. I become more strategic and more open-minded, and most of all, to have the courage to pursue what I want. And another thing is about our class. I do remember that after 2 years, when we have the graduation ceremony, majority of our classmates get promoted or land better job or decided to take an entrepreneur path. And I think what matters most is everyone is in the journey of a better person. So that's the most important thing for me. I think it's a transformation journey for me and for all of our classmates.
Fantastic, thank you. And Klaus, how about you? You've changed jobs since the program?
Yeah, well, both during and just after, actually. So I started as a VP for Greater China for my old company, GS Hydro, and they generously offered to sponsor this. And during the program, I was promoted to be responsible for Asia Pacific, and actually didn't have a big plan to move on to something else, but was offered an opportunity to have the strategic range of a global company, the full responsibility there, basically just after I finished my capstone. And while I enjoyed working for GS Hydro, it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. It was also with great support from my old company that they supported me to take this opportunity. So I think how the program helped was, it was not a discussion at the interview for the new job that at CEIBS. It was more, I think it gave me the confidence and the ability to speak intelligently about what I perceived to be the problems in the new company. I could analyze the data that I got and review it. And I think, like Irene echoed, had a greater strategic insight that helped me to sound good in the interview with my new company, and they accordingly offered me this job. So specific issues that helped me in the Gemba, as I showed you previously when I pivoted the camera, I have my Gemba books actually here in the office. So as soon as I left the Gemba, I took the books to my office because I had to start on my business plan and strategic plan for the new company basically from day one. The first 100 days kind of thing. So they're still here, and I still use them. As Louise said, it's wonderful opportunity to sit and discuss something with a lot of different people. It's something altogether different when you take it back with you and you get to apply it in everyday use immediately afterwards. I can truly say that what I have learned is it sticks now because you have been through it in so many iterations. So that was a great opportunity for me to use what I learned in the program almost the next day, so to speak.
Thank you. Klaus, I'm going to stay with you for another question. So obviously you mentioned that you're obviously an expat here in China, but you'd already been here for many years before you started the program. So, I mean, is it really necessary to do a program like this to get the additional China depth? What's your perspective on that?
Well, I think it's when you have been here as long as I've been. I mean, I have a green card and I'm married to a Chinese woman, and my kids are both born here. I think you constantly want to unwrap what is the enigma, or some might say the Pandora's box of what is China. And I think not being native to the country, you never stop learning. And for me, I was all the time looking for new ways to learn more. And the quantum leap that I took when I met people like Irene and Boer, so native Chinese managers with MNCs that wanted the same as me and that were similar as me, and we could exchange ideas, and I could talk to them about how I'm a foreigner in a Chinese organization, and they could talk about other issues working with MNCs and having the opposite cultural gap. I think it's that conversation that really moves you, and there the cohorts in CEIBS are a wonderful mix of many nationalities. So I think depending on your plans, I mean, if you have your career and you want to take the next step and your company supports you, I think definitely this is one of the best investments you can undertake.
Thank you, Louise. Anything to add on that? As someone who was already quite well versed in China, what is the value of diving deeper?
Well, I think Klaus has really summed it up. I think there's never enough unwrapping you can do to understand China. So the opportunity to be able to delve in, and for me, what I really loved was the China economy classes that I took. And sort of being an economist, having a bit of an economics background, I already know quite a bit and started working in China in the mid-90s. So I've kind of seen China develop. But to be able to sit down and listen to very respected economists like Wu Jinlian about how China's developed and the challenges, it's knowledge and insight that you won't get anywhere else. And there's just so many layers to unravel. So it's really worth the time and effort.
Fantastic. And so I'm going to flip this question upside down now to our two Chinese panelists, to Irene and to Boer. Both of you, or Boer, at the time you studied, you were working for several multinationals you have. Irene, one of the very biggest global companies, Procter & Gamble. For you, what's the value in terms of learning about the global side of things as Chinese working in global companies? Maybe,
I think...
Irene, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I choose EMBA program, because I'm seeking a program as diverse as I can. So actually, I learn most of the things from our classmates. They come from totally different background with different culture, and we visit different countries together. So there are quite a dynamic in our class, and we discuss, we challenge, we even debate with the professors in the class. So I think from the global side, number one is I learn from our classmates from different background. The second thing is about the global modules. We visit a lot of countries together. I choose a lot of electives, not ordinary, like Israel, like India. So I really have the chance to get in the depths of the country, not like China. So we know how is the position of our country and how we can further learn from other countries. I think that's the two things from the people and from the elected, the two things on the global side.
Thank you. And Boer, what's the value in terms of the global side of things in the program?
Yeah, perhaps I can speak it better in my current role and then some of the past roles, because especially for a tech startup and focus on internet technology or connectivity like us, it's inevitable that you're going to build a global business at some point. You can't stay in US, for example, if you start your company in Silicon Valley. You can't just stay put in China, Shanghai, because your customer are most likely global customers. So back then, I think most of us actually joined to EMBA, started with more of a functional functional role. For me, I'm in an engineering position. Number one, you need sort of get out of that narrowed functional role to take a bigger perspective. And beyond that, you need to take a role of, when you truly become an entrepreneur and you decided you're making strategic decisions in terms of how to reach out to, for example, outside of China, what are the regions or areas you're going to choose, who is going to be your partner, and what kind of the ecosystem you have tapped into to build a tech startup. And those are very strategic decisions you have to make. For example, in our business, we're doing industrial internet. Of course, the most mature, based on your understanding and learning from the sessions, the EMBA course, you go to US, you go to Europe, you can sort of learn that some of the most mature market and also some of the most immature market. And therefore, it's going to help you to make some strategic decisions later on. And also know where, for us, we have to worry about cash flow, right? I never worry about cash flow when I was in 3M, for example. But now, where can you tap into funds, right? Maybe it's not just in China. And although you're based in Shanghai, but actually you can tap into capital pool outside of China as well, depending on how you structure your company. And many of that learning is actually from your global experience, not from China experience, in terms of how to set up, for example, a VIE structure, how to get a shareholder overseas to be also join your company. And I think those knowledge are very critical.
Great, thank you both. I want to ask you about faculty, and perhaps Irene, you're sort of most recent graduate here among us. In terms of the faculty, what was your impression of them, the teaching style, maybe the classroom sort of interaction?
First of all, what impressed me is the diversity of the faculty members. They come from different schools, different countries. Secondly, is they are very open-minded and very tolerant as well. As I said before, our class is very academic demanding, so we challenge, we debate, and with the professors. But the outcome is quite good because the professor will not challenge why we challenge them, but they will discuss with us. So the truth comes out through the discussion. So I really appreciate this kind of conversation. So that's what I like most about our faculty, the diversity and they're open-minded.
Thank you. And Klaus, also quite recently graduated, a couple of years. What's your memories of and impressions of the faculty and the teaching sort of style?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be part of the class committee as a chief learning officer of EMBA 16. So I was like the liaison between the students and the faculty. And while I think networking and socializing are a big part of any executive education, like Boer mentioned, useful afterwards, I also wanted to make sure that the 20 months that I put into this also were academically rigorous. So I had, I would say, very high expectations to the faculty going in. And I can honestly say that they were, the reality was much better. The opening module, Jack Wood, even I would say accounting with Eric Stice, a person, I also have an economic background, so I wish I would have had a teacher like him. I learned this the first time, probably I would have done much better. But I mean, how you make accounting interesting, I honestly don't know. I honestly believe he might be the only person in the world who can do that. And the list goes on and on. I think the faculty at CEIBS has been built through a very determined strategy by the school to try and attract the top minds in the respective fields. And I think it's starting to really show, and it has been paying off for quite some time.
Great, thank you, Klaus. I want to turn to really dig in a little bit to your classmates. Obviously, we have 4 of you here, but from different classes. But I'd love to hear a little bit about, I mean, I think several of you have already mentioned diversity, but just to tell us a little bit more about you know, what kind of classmates you have, and how the interaction is with one another. Louise, it's going back a long time, but are you still in touch with your classmates after all these years?
Absolutely, of course. So, you know, we had a slightly smaller class than the 2019 cohort. So we had about 60 people from about 30 different countries and regions. So a pretty diverse group as well. And, you know, over I think the first 5 years after graduating, every year we had different groups of classmates organize various activities. That's kind of slowed down a little bit, but we still definitely keep in close touch through WeChat, and we arrange activities at least once a year, although this year, of course, is a bit difficult. And we're celebrating our 10th anniversary too this year. So I guess I'd say that, you know, over the years, we've still been a very tight-knit group. And it's not just the social activities. Many of us have become colleagues, business partners, and, you know, staying in touch with your classmates, especially after such an intense experience as an EMBA, you really form very, very strong bonds. But I'd say once you get ready and you're graduating and you're out and you're sort of an alumni, you need to make sure you put in the effort to reach out as well and do your fair share to support. So, you know, the network is there, your classmates are there to support you, but likewise, we have to, you know, have to support them as well. So, yeah, I'd say we're still quite closely connected and keen to continue to support each other.
Great, thank you. And Klaus, how about you? Tell us a bit more about your classmates, the interaction, and how you guys got on and so on.
Yeah, so I think Louise made a great answer there. We are a little bit more recent, and I think, I don't know what it is that happens. I think it was actually Nikos that said to me at some point, it doesn't matter what age you are, when you walk through the doors of any education or school, we all become students, and you know, you want to reach out, you want to bond with people because we're all kind of in the same new situation. So I can say that I've formed strong bonds and have friends for life, I believe, among several of my classmates. I think we were, so we had a Zurich and Accra and Shanghai set up, and you are a little bit closer with the people in your cohort. But of course you have, as you showed in your slides, a lot of activities together. And I also feel that the class that you overlap with, in our case, that was 2015, they really do a lot to welcome you to the school. And so you form a lot of bonds with the 2015s as well, who were before you. And then we try to do the same, let's say, welcoming, hosting job for the 17. And of course, Irene can answer if we did a good job or not. But I mean, you form the bonds across various years, and then you have the alumni chapters, you have online, you have more activities than I can count, but there's basically always a CEIBS activity everywhere, any night, someplace in the world if you want to attend. So it's more like pick your places. So it is truly a transforming experience in that sense that I can only compare it to when I went to university and I met friends at that time, people I think that will be around for as long as those people were for the second part of my life.
Right, thank you, Klaus. I want to talk about the workload of the study requirements, because this is a question that many people ask me when I'm talking with interested candidates. You know, how do you manage to fit in the work, the study, the classes? How do you manage to fit that in with your already very busy professional, personal lives? So Irene, maybe any thoughts on that? How you managed to get all the study done?
First of all, I think it's totally manageable. It's a challenge for a lot of people because actually during the 2 years, it requires at least 80 days, 4 days for you to participate in the program. But if you can arrange your work and life better, and of course, you will have a good supporting system in your family that your family members let you in so that you can manage the workload. But for me, I think it's totally manageable. And the second thing is, I think as an executive, managing multitask is a must. So it's also a learning journey for us to how we balance the work and the studies, and how we balance the work days and weekend. So I think in terms of the workload, it's total management. It's not a problem.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Boer, I have a very specific question for you, because you've mentioned a couple of times that you've come from an engineering background. And, you know, we have a lot of people from this background interested in the program, and a lot of people on the program who are engineers or were engineers, and also people from medical backgrounds. So what's your advice for someone from a more technical background as to whether, you know, first of all, whether they're able to do a serious business program, and then what they'll get out of it?
Well, certainly, I think the answer is yes. Otherwise, that's going to rule myself out, right? So, I think certainly a engineering background is, if you look at how many engineers finally, in a big corporate finally become a CEO role, the percentage is not very high. I remember the number average is about 6%, lower than a CFO, lower than sales. It's one of the lower function of people that can raise up to the top, right? But I do think that we as engineers have the capability to think systematically and certainly take on challenges. Maybe sometimes to the previous question, like workload, that sort of scares me a bit as well, because you put every piece of your work together and say, hey, on top of this, I have to do additional workload in CEIBS, and we have to get straight A. And that's always sort of the engineering mindset. But I can tell you that if you go through the program, if that's one of your weakness, it probably turn around to be your strength. You don't have to be a person in every aspect, and you go is to find those A players and to build a player team, and then use them, leverage the team to build a plus business. And then in certain areas, you just have to tell yourself, and although I'm an engineer, I can solve all the problem, but that's not a problem I'm the best person to solve. And realizing that is through the course, realizing that is a very important learning experience. So certainly I think engineers on the line, don't be afraid of taking a business session. Certainly the math problems in your financial program is going to be very easy for you. I did all those things and no problem. But looking at the bigger picture and how if you want to transition yourself from an engineering mindset to a business mindset, I think this is sort of the best experience you can have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I want to turn to leadership. I know, Louise, you've mentioned this quite strongly and the impact it's had, but I do want to specifically talk about the leadership module. And this is, a very important part of the program. It's sort of, we've only had it for the last 5 years, actually. So only Irene and Klaus would have gone through this particular module. As Klaus, you mentioned, Professor Jack Wood. It's a very special module, quite different from what a typical business school module probably looks like. Could you walk us through what happens in the leadership module, and maybe talk a little bit about the impact on you, starting with Klaus?
Yeah, I mean, I think the leadership module with Jack Wood, and also with actually one of the former Special Forces Danish soldier, that was nice to meet him. I'm still friends with him today. They set up an obstacle course. So the theory is based on, well, let's say some of the darker times in human history where different militaries found out they couldn't select officers based on straight A's alone. They needed to find out how people reacted in stressful environments. Could they take leadership in a situation, let's say, build a bridge or get over a river or something like that. And basically, that's what the leadership module does. 1 or 2 days of that physical obstacle course. You are in your teams, your core teams, and you need to try and defeat these obstacles. And people naturally emerge. Leaders naturally emerge. You are videotaped the whole time, and it's a very special experience, both scary but also I think it happens in a safe environment. There are coaches with you all the time. Of course, Jack is there to facilitate, and he also spends the couple of first days to explain what it is he wants to do, and then you start analyzing the video, and you see certain patterns about your behavior, and you, because it's happened in a safe environment, but it still simulates stress, or it feels real. So you could take those patterns, all of a sudden you can translate them to past leadership positions or leadership situations in your company, and then the solution emerges for you. It's quite an epiphany, so to speak, actually, and one of the most transformational experiences that I have ever had, and it's a wonderful way to start the program, because you get like shaken together, and there are tears and revelations and hugs and things like that. So it's really, really great, and then it's wrapped up at the end with your personal coach and your development plan, and you feel a sense of purpose going forward.
Great, thank you. Irene, anything to add about the leadership experience?
Yeah, I think it just, I just joined a lecture Professor Jack Wood held 1 month ago, I think, and it really brings back a good memory. To be honest, before I joined the leadership module, I put no expectation there, because in P&G 15 years, when I joined a lot of leadership modules inside P&G and outside P&G, and I really don't want to talk about these words. I really don't want to join a session called leadership. But even though after 1 week, it really exceeded my expectations, because before I joined it, I was told that, Irene, you will cry when you talk with the psychologist. I said, no, why I will cry? I will not. But eventually every one of us cried after we talked with the psychologist, which Professor Jack would assign to our group. This is the first impression about the first module. The second module is, this is the first point about the leadership module. The second point is about, it's the first time we get in touch with the classmates. Our classmates, we have a lot of in common, and our classmates with a lot of diversity. So if you let yourself expose to them and don't afraid to make mistakes, they will help you, because people will appreciate, your classmates will appreciate the people who want to develop. So you will start the journey of helping each other. So the people around you, starting from the leadership module, will become a lifetime friend. So that's the two things I want to add on top of what Klaus talked about the details about the module. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Louise, any regrets? Anything you would do differently from your time at CEIBS?
Yeah, definitely no regrets at all. What I would have done a bit differently is during at least my year, my cohort, we had the opportunity to join some of the Chinese EMBA classes if we were, able to listen in. And I would have done more of that. I would have crossed over and sat in on more of the Chinese classes. So if you are a foreigner who speaks a bit of Mandarin, there's just that added color and knowledge that you can pick up by joining in on some of the Chinese classes. So that would be what I do a bit differently.
Okay, thank you. And what, anything you would do differently from your time?
Well, I don't think there's much of I would do very much differently, but I do think that if we all, I guess all the panelists on the line as well, remember that it finally becomes those 4 days in your whole months. That's the best 4 days you have. So if anything I can do differently is probably put more effort into those 4 days and enjoy more.
Okay, thank you. And Klaus, anything you do differently?
No, I was a firm believer of the garbage in, garbage out paradigm. So I really try to do a full immersion thing with this. And also, as Irene mentioned earlier about the workload, I would say is manageable as long as you have strong support from your family and also from your company. I think that is essential before you do that. I did experience some classmates that did this despite, let's say, not with the blessings of the company, and they all had some, let's say, troubles during the program where the confrontation came out. Manageable, of course, but if you have that check mark to say the company wants you to do this and they support you, and you talk to your spouse and they support you fully, then I would say, yeah, then it's just pedal to the metal and do as much as you can. My only regrets is I couldn't do more. I still want to give back to the school. I still want to actually participate in more things at the school. You become kind of addicted to learning, I would say.
Great, thank you. And Irene, same question for you. Anything you would do differently?
I just expect Gemba office can do differently to put more modules in our 2 years, because I really miss the days spent with our classmates. Even though actually after graduation, we spend a lot of time with our classmates, I have to say that 40% or even 50% of our social lives are with our classmates or alumni. But we really miss the days when we spend time together in the classroom, even discuss a case till midnight. So I don't have regrets. I just hope that we have more modules together.
Great. Thank you. So I can see that there are a lot of questions coming in. So I'm going to sort of wrap up maybe with one more question for the panelists here before we open it up to the floor for the questions from the audience, because I really want to get through as many as we can. But I'm going to go back to you, Louise. Who would you recommend to enroll in this course?
Yeah, so I'd say anyone committed to challenging themselves, putting themselves out of their comfort zone, trying to reach their inner potential. I also think those individuals who are really keen to get this blend of the China depth and global breadth, and I know that's sort of the school's motto, but it really is important. And I think the days where having China knowledge or experience was a nice to have it'll be over soon. It'll be a must have. So I think those who are really keen to get a good understanding of how China works and how China, fits into the global scheme of things, I think this program is for them.
Great, thank you. Let's say Klaus, who would you recommend to consider this program or to apply for this program?
Yeah, I completely echo Louise's remarks. And I would say on top of that, I would say, not to repeat myself too much, but I also to make sure that you actually have the capability in your life currently to do so. It is a 20-month undertaking, so it's not to be undertaken lightly, I would say. Of course, you can do it lightly, but I think that the benefit is also accordingly. So I would be very clear about my goals before I went into this, and I think I think Irene mentioned she spent 1 or 2 years to research before, and I think I did something similar. So it is something that requires reflection before you undertake it. It is life altering for better purpose.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So I want to move on to Q&A now, because we do have quite a lot of questions coming in. A reminder to our audience, please feel free to continue to submit those questions through Q&A. Chat is disabled, but Q&A is how you can do that. So I'm going to try and get through as many of these as I can. For the audience as well, feel free, you can obviously address the question generally, or if you do want to ask one particular panelist, include that in your question, and we'll do our best to get the answer you need. So let's get started. And I'm going to answer one here, which is a very common question that we get a lot. And so this is from Alan. Thank you, Alan. What interactions will global EMBA students have with the Chinese EMBA and the MBA students and alumni communities? So maybe, I think probably one of, maybe Boer could start with there. What sort of interactions does your class have with the other classes at CEIBS?
Yeah, I think there are many opportunities. I think this is probably one of the questions that you may have, is either to think about Gemba or just the Chinese track of the EMBA program. I think there are a lot of interaction opportunities with the other students. The school actually organizes a lot of events on an annual basis, and also on some important holidays and ceremonies that you have interactions. But also from the course perspective, for example, if you take on a Gemba program, the first half is mandatory, but then the second half is really a lot of electives that you can choose. Many of my choices are classes with Chinese EMBA, because I got the benefit of those, the Gemba sort of more academic rigorous sessions, but also I get the exposure to many Chinese EMBA students. So I feel like that's a very good balance. And certainly a lot of the opportunities you will be meet with the younger MBA students if you think about hunting some good talents for your organization. All those are available. And then afterwards, CEIBS really do a very good program to keep you attached to the alumni. Either it's online, offline. I think this year is probably my 6th or 8th online session with CEIBS. That just speaks to the variety of programs you can have with the school. Okay,
thank you very much, Boer. Irene, anything to add to that question, the interaction with other classes?
Actually, I think it's very funny because I asked the same question before I applied CEIBS. I think the beauty of Gemba program is you pay the money for one program, but you can enjoy the beauty of two programs, which is both Gemba and Chinese EMBA programs. And the reason I say so is officially CEIBS provide a lot of chance for us to mingle with Chinese EMBAs, and also no matter in classroom for the elective and outside of classroom. The second thing is there's a lot of association in CEIBS, so how much you can leverage the resources in Chinese EMBA, or I have to say in CEIBS, really depend on how open you are and how engaging you are. For me, for example, I mentioned that majority of my social life now is with CEIBS alumni, and half is with my classmates, and half of them are with the running group, because I joined a Gobi Challenge session, so I make a lot of friends there. So we aim for the same goal. So we have a lot of in common. So I don't think that take a Gemba class is a barrier for us to learn from Chinese EMBA. I do think it's a platform for us to take the advantage of too.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'm going to ask another question here, which I might really test your memories here to our panelists, but what questions can be expected in the admission interview? Or perhaps if that's too difficult to remember, you might just have some tips for applicants as to how to approach the admission interview. Maybe starting with you, Klaus.
Well, yeah, specific questions, I'll be honest to say, I don't remember so much, but I do remember the interviews being of the nature that trying to probe your motivation to join the program, try to assess if you're ready, willing, able during the interview assessment, which can be quite long and not unpleasant at all, but rather I think it's normally an alum and a professor that do the interview. They want to make sure that the people that join the program are 100% focused and on board and have checked all the boxes and are ready to go from day one. And I think that's the most important thing to bring into the interview, to be sure when you reach that level that you want to do this. I mean, doubt that might have been earlier about which school and when and so on. By the time you reach that level, you should be 100% clear that this is what you want to do and this is the school you want to do it at.
Fantastic. Thank you, Klaus. I have a question here from Dushyant, who says, I'm a professional with 11 plus years of experience. I'm currently on a break as I'm evaluating the master's program, which suits my requirement. Since I am on a break and not associated with any companies, would that be a challenge in being considered for the EMBA program? So I can actually answer that myself. It is certainly the strong preference of us as an admissions committee, as an admissions office, that if at all possible, our students are employed while they're working. Are employed while they're taking the program. The reason for that is that it is a part-time program and it's designed for executives, and it's designed in a way that you can do modules and then immediately go back to your office and implement those. So the concern would be with someone who's not employed is that you don't have that ability to immediately apply what you learn. So the risk would be perhaps that you're not getting as much out of it as some of the other students who are obviously employed at that time. Louise, would you any thoughts on that question?
Marcel, no, not over and above what you've said. I think it's more of a school policy sort of requirement. And I think at the end of the day, what you take away also from the EMBA experience is that ability to show that you are able to use what you've learned, in your workplace, and then share those experiences with your classmates. So that's, I think, part of the experience. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So I hope I answered that question there for you. Another question here. The program seems to focus a lot on developing leadership skills. What is the balance between soft subjects and more technical topics such as data and analytics? Maybe Irene, any thoughts on that?
Okay, that's what I thought before. So that's why I mentioned that I really don't put expectation in my first module when you told me that the first module is leadership. But eventually I found it's just, first of all, leadership is just in the first module. And second thing is the whole journey is not about leadership. It's about how you equip yourself with multi-knowledge and multi-skill. But along the way, you learn things from the professor, from the book, from the classmates to shape your leadership. For example, to be very specific for me, I think my understanding to leadership now is quite simple, that I learned from my classmates. Leadership is when you think something is right, but nobody is doing that, you just go to do it. And when something is wrong, but nobody go to fix it, and you go fix it. So that's my understanding about leadership, which I learned from our classmates. What I want to say is leadership is first module, but the entire module design is not only about leadership at all. You have a lot of choices and covering the basic knowledge and also a lot of electives. So don't be afraid of that. Don't worry about that.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Irene. Another question here. My company, from Joseph Tan, my company has globalization strategy. How would the global modules relate to the globalization path of Chinese companies? I wonder if maybe, I think, Boer, you touched on this earlier with regards to your own case, but do you have anything further to add on to that?
Yeah, I think today, certainly globalization strategy is very important for Chinese domestic company, because the market size, if your company is looking to further expand, you have to be thinking about globalization. Doesn't matter if you're in a traditional business or like a tech startup like ours. I think how those global modules could be relevant. It's not to say you go to, for example, you go to a different overseas modules that's going to give you all the answers about understand global, but it's actually from my experience, is to connect you with the environment. When you're in China, your mind is always tied into the CCTV news, the Chinese media news. You never think about outside of China, right? But for example, when we went to Korea for our first global module, and Professor Bala gave us economy session, that's the first time it sort of inspired you to think about questions and challenges on a global level, from demand and supply, all those basic rules, how that's going to tie into your business. Inspired you to read more about global business and trying to discuss with your classmates who have global background to talk about what have they done in terms of in their organization to do the globalization. Many of them actually are international companies coming into China to build their China business. And now in Joseph, your position, you actually taking a chapter that you need to go out of the country and build a global business. So you need to think about questions for like footprint, IP, even employment, are they educated enough? And all those questions can be very valuable. The starting point is when you go out to a different country, you realize you don't understand those. And the result is you study on yourself.
Fantastic. Thank you, Boer. There are a couple of questions here which are related to COVID-19, which I'll try and field myself. So will the induction and on-campus modules be delivered online if the COVID-19 situation persists? So, I mean, this is obviously the great unknown, I think, for everyone at the moment. The current situation with our program is that the students who started last year and the year before are undertaking modules, some of their modules online now. That's the only choice that we and every business school in the world has to do. And as soon as we are able to resume offline modules, we will do so with our existing students. For the forthcoming class, that is the class starting at the end of October 2020, the new class to come in, that is still our plan to begin at that time. But we are, of course, monitoring the situation as everyone is, as there are many moving parts such as travel restrictions and so on. So we are keeping an eye on the situation, and we'll make a call on things if necessary when the time is right for that. What I can say is that for the forthcoming class, it would be more likely to have a postponement of the opening rather than to begin online. So it's very important. I think that Klaus and Irene have shared a lot about how that opening module takes place. It really needs to have people here on campus, as there's a lot of human to human interactions. So that's really, really important for us. And there's a couple more questions here, which again, I'll also field. Someone's asking is GMAT, IELTS, or TOEFL required? GMAT is, IELTS and TOEFL are not required for the application. GMAT is accepted, but we actually recommend that our applicants take the executive assessment, which is a modified version of GMAT by the same company as GMAT. It's really, if you can think of it as the GMAT for EMBA programs, and it's designed for executive MBA programs. We were one of the piloting schools and developing together with GMAT that test. So you can do GMAT, but we recommend that you do the executive assessment. But you must do one or the other. Okay. So let me see another question. Here's one here saying, what benefits do you value the most after your transformation in this program? Is it promotion, salary increase, business knowledge, networking, or something else? So maybe, Louise, you've obviously been graduated the longest time. Maybe you could take that. What benefits do you value the most after your transformation in the program?
Yeah, I think, of course, looking at how the program can help accelerate your career development, and that then translates into positions, promotions, and salary. I mean, those are factors, but after such a long period for me, I really think it's the network, the alumni network, the comments I made about meeting Gemba alumni in Africa, sitting across the table in the middle of sort of nowhere, and being able to have a connection and a sense of trust that you automatically respect each other and can open up and start communicating. I think that is really, really powerful, more powerful than perhaps many of us realize. And then I know we've sort of talked about this a lot, but I mean, what really stays with you after so many years is maybe not so much some of the technical courses. It's really what you learned about yourself as a leader, and how you translate that not just into the work you do. I mean, at this stage in my career, I think I've achieved an okay success, but what am I doing in my community? How am I using the leadership confidence I've gained even in my own family? So I think it makes you really a better person in more ways than one, not just from a career perspective, but in your life in general.
Thank you, Louise. Perhaps Boer, same question for you. What benefits do you value the most after your transformation in this program?
I think sort of a bit of everything that has already been mentioned, but I think while the benefit is certainly business knowledge, now you can sort of, in a startup situation, I don't have a financial manager, I really don't have this and that at the beginning phase. So you sort of as yourself as being the special force to do everything, product, sales, marketing, you name it. So that definitely helped. But also I think the long-term relationship you build with your classmates, they sort of become your free business counsel and potentially first customers. So those are the benefits you certainly can have with your life, right? They always give you trusted, objective opinions about your thoughts. You can really bounce your ideas with them without thinking, hey, do they have an interest? They don't, right? Think about your own growing experience. It's very hard to build that relationship in anywhere else other than a school. So I think that's the most valuable piece, that you always find people you can trust. After you go to work, in a company, probably have very limited people you can trust, but outside in your classroom, everybody you can trust. That feeling is a long-time benefit. You can carry on with you for a long time.
Great, thank you. I have an interesting question here, because on the panel we have a managing director, a CEO, another CEO, and then a general manager. So the question is, is it possible to get into the program if I'm not at the C-suite level already? Maybe Klaus, any thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, I think I don't know if you selected on purpose these titles, but no, I mean, in our cohort, in our class for the 16s, there was a lot of functional specialists as well, middle-level managers for large Chinese corporations, but also large MNCs that were selected on the fast track in those companies and were, with the support of the companies, chosen to take the next step. I think that's actually the perfect timing to start, is if you have reached a certain level, like Louise said, a certain plateau in your career, and you want to take that next step. It doesn't matter where you are or what that step is. The Gemba, the school, can help you to take that with greater confidence.
Thank you. Irene, anything you would add to that?
First of all, I think it requires a certain level of similarity in your career, because your classmates with a lot of experiences. But even though, for example, in our class, the age is between 30 and 50. So I think it's quite a big range, but you need to have a certain level of similarity. The second thing is, I think beyond all the hard criteria, how you keep yourself have a intellectual curiosity is most important thing on top of the hard criteria, so that you can pursue your learning along the way.
Great, thank you. Okay, I've got one here from Lily, and I'm going to ask all panelists, but I want a kind of quick fire answer if I can. What's your favorite and most useful course at CEIBS during your study? Your favorite course or professor? Louise.
Okay, it's a toss-up between Catherine Sheen's leadership course and Professor Dingran's accounting course. I love them both.
Thank you. Great. Boer?
And sort of as I mentioned, Professor Bala's economy session is my favorite. Just bring me up from a functional thinking to a really global scale.
And Irene?
Jack Wood.
Great, thank you. Klaus?
Yeah, so Jack is taken, so I'm gonna say Eric Stice. Something.
Right, okay, thank you. There's a question here which I will take, which is could you please discuss the difference between the single module and the double module track? So it's a good question. Basically, the single module track is the option to study 4 days every month. That's always a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And the majority of those modules are right here in Shanghai. The double module track is 9 days every 2 months, so longer but less frequent modules. Both tracks, single module track and double module track, both have core modules that you must do in Zurich and Barcelona. But the double module track has an additional core module in Accra as well. So you'll be outside for 3 core modules in the double module track and 2 core modules in the single module track, okay? So, but it's important to know that, you know, there's 3 modules you open all together and both tracks together. You finish with the kind of closing module, both tracks together. And there's a mid-program module where you're all together as well. And then all of the electives are mixed in between the 2 tracks. Now, broadly speaking, I mean, the admissions process is exactly the same for either of those. The double module track tends to be a little bit more international in its profile than the single module track, and tends to be spread out a little bit more in terms of the geography of where people are based. But as I say, we like to think of it as one big program. You start together, you finish together. And there's just some of those core modules where you split apart to be in your individual track. So I got it. Someone's asked 2 questions here. So so it seems we have both alumni who attended CEIBS as career improvements in large corporations as well as startups. Just wondering which this program is geared for more. And roughly what the percentage of students have gone into startups or are looking into startups. So maybe Boer, given you're the entrepreneur on the panel today, so you know, is the program more geared towards sort of multinational big corporations or for people looking for startups?
I think it's sort of both, but maybe perhaps a bit more on corporation. That's, I mean, many of the backgrounds, think about if CEIBS developed a product and many of the students, corporate executives, then we only talk about startup. That won't fit the need of the development need for the target audience. I think with that probably it's more of a focus of CEIBS. In essence, many people, like the other panelists on the line, stayed in their track to professional development in a big corporate. Sort of, I think this session, like 25% on the line, is probably going to be the percentage you're looking for, like 20-ish, 15, 20-ish people from my classmates at least, gone on to a entrepreneur path. Several of us sort of stay engaged and we've gone that path, but certainly there are a portion of the courses where we have entrepreneurship, some part of the leadership piece or the strategy piece also cover entrepreneur startup elements. I think it's more towards a big corporate executive education than the startup, but you certainly can still learn a lot of the startup entrepreneurship.
Okay, thank you. And the second question, this one is for Irene. At the beginning, you mentioned you picked CEIBS because of the diversity of the students. In what way did that help you?
I mentioned that the reason I deselect Hong Kong program is because I do believe that the development of China is in mainland, and also the diversity of the classmates. And how this kind of helped me. For me, I graduated from university and then I joined P&G. So I stayed in P&G for 15 years. So I work and I lead the people like me. So, but in Gamba program, it provides me more than 60 people like me, but not like me as well, from different countries. So I think the conflict in my mind is really helped me to develop myself, to let me jump out of my comfort zone. For example, our one classmate from Israel bring us to the Air Force Base when we have the elective in Israel. And also, I think the most memorable moment in Gamba is this classmate talk about the experience when he was a pilot in Israel Air Force. So I think it's totally quite different journey versus what I have in my experience. So that brings different insight and help me to be more open-minded, to be more calm, to be a better person. So that's what I learned from the diversity of our classmates.
Great, thank you, Irene. Another question here, and this is from Nitin. Is CEIBS a platform for a successful global, so non-Chinese executive to enter the China market and integrate in Chinese economy and become successful in China? So I think at least both our two foreign panelists tonight were already in China, but could you maybe, Louise, address that question from the outside? Could someone use the degree to kind of launch themselves into the Chinese market?
Yeah, I'd say absolutely. And again, as I mentioned, this program I really think is for individuals that really want to get a better handle on China and its position in a global context. And you know, to go through the program and to have the access to either the faculty, the school resources, you know, the whole package will leave you with a much better understanding of China to use as a platform than to launch into further career development in the mainland, if that's your goal. But I'd also defer to Klaus and get his view as well.
Klaus, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I would actually say that I wish that I had known about the program earlier, because I mean, it is definitely a great way to accelerate, to learn more about China. I think specifically, as the school slogan says, this is what the school focuses on, and I think they do so better than anyone else out there. So whether you're like Louise and me, seasoned China hands that want to shop the store, or you're someone who wants to fast track their China strategy, I think the tool is the same. It really can help you a lot because you get access to people like Boer and Irene, as Boer said, your future customers or your free business consultants, and they know about China better than anyone. And at the same time, you have this faculty side of resident professors and let's say visiting professors that have been with the school for a very, very long time. And yeah, I think that combination is unbeatable.
Great, thank you very much. I have a very good question here. Someone, that's Lanray, says, talking about globalization, are there courses taught that are focused on emerging economies, especially Africa? So I can answer that in part, and I'll say that, you know, emerging economies is a very big part of the program. So, I mean, first of all, you know, it's very much based in China. China is no longer emerging as such, but it's not one of the big traditional economies. So there's already, that's the starting point. But when you get to the elective stage, the electives have, I would say, a very strong focus on emerging economies. So among the electives that we provide, the global electives these are, we have one which is in Southeast Asia, and that for this year will be in Kuala Lumpur and in Ho Chi Minh City. In previous years, we've gone to Bangkok and KL. In a previous year, we went to Singapore and Jakarta. So, a very strong kind of emerging economy focus. In fact, the actual focus of the content is very much about Southeast Asian kind of emerging economies. There is an elective module in India, very much an emerging economy. We have a core module in Africa if you take what we call the double module track. We have an elective module in Africa as well. So these take place at CEIBS campus in Accra, which is in Ghana, West Africa. And I would add that CEIBS has had that campus there for more than 10 years. So we actually have quite a footprint into West Africa through having that campus there. And we also have a module, an elective module in Sao Paulo as well, so Latin America. So a very strong focus there. Louise, would you have anything to say about CEIBS in terms of the footprint in Africa and the impact there? I mean, you spent some time there, quite a long time there yourself.
Yes, well, while I was in Africa, I moved across to do a role in Africa in 2015 and visited Accra many times, so know Professor Sameni very well at the Accra campus. And I think what really makes the CEIBS Africa piece quite unique is the WILA program, which supports women in entrepreneurship and leadership in Africa. And I think that, especially for supporting women leaders in Africa, has been really quite transformational. And I got involved in some of the WILA activities over my years out in Africa. So I just add that. I mean, you'll have your global elective courses that the GEMBA students will take. But I think the impact that CEIBS has in Africa more broadly with the WILA program is really quite special.
Great, thank you. And either of Klaus or Irene, did either of you take either the Accra elective or India or Southeast Asia?
I did not.
No?
I take the module in India.
Okay. Any thoughts on that, Irene?
I see conflict there. So the conflict of rich people and the poor people, the conflict of fast development industry and the very slow moving industry. So I really see, even though India is next to us, but it's really different world there.
Great. Thank you. So I have a question here, which I'm going to try and sort of just compress a little bit, but it is a good question. So someone who says they are eligible to be either for CEIBS GEMBA or for CEIBS MBA. So they have 15 years of working experience and they're in a senior position. So what is the recommendation for the selection between the two? I'll start on that. There's certain elements I think that are self-selecting between the MBA and the EMBA. The MBA is a full-time program. The global EMBA is a part-time. So that's often, the deciding factor for many people. In terms of the profile of students in each program, as I think I showed earlier, the global MBA, the average age is 39 or 40, with about 15 years of experience on average. The MBA, CEIBS full-time MBA program, the average age is more like 28, 29. So anywhere from sort of 3, 4, 5 years of work experience on average. So, I mean, that's just numbers, but I think that gives you a pretty clear idea about the sort of students that we have in each program. Both are, great programs and ranked very highly. And so I think that you really need to think about the kind of peers that you want to have alongside you in the class, which I think can probably help you with your question there. So thank you to Zabal for that question. A question here, many take GEMBA to fast track their career or supported by their company to take up management positions in the company. how does the panel see the benefits for the people in the older age bracket, 50 years, 25 years of work experience with many, many years as a GM? So I feel I'm going to get in trouble if I ask any one person, because they'll think that I'm claiming they're the oldest. But does anyone have any advice for the benefit of someone in the older age bracket? Any takers from the panel?
Well, maybe I'll start. I think Irene even mentioned in her class you had a range of ages between 30 and 50, and when I did the EMBA 10 years ago, we had the same. From the early 30s up to late 40s. And, for those that were in the older age bracket, I've seen many of those from my class go on to be the chairmen of the board, and non-executive directors on multiple boards. So, I mean, there's always something that you can learn and internalize from the experience that you can use to broaden your influence in your community. So, I think it's still very much worth it, and I've seen it with my older classmates.
Great, thank you. I have one here, and maybe I'll ask Irene this question. There's someone asking, again, the comparison with the Chinese EMBA program, the difference between the two and what you get from one, but maybe not the other. Any thoughts on that from you?
I think, first of all, Tech EMBA is first of all, two programs are really good, because I know a lot of friends, they join the Chinese program, and a lot of professors who teach in Chinese EMBA program. So I have to say that two programs are really good. Talking about EMBA programs, the benefit I see is, number one, you pay the tuition for one and enjoy the benefit of the two. So I think it's really value for money. Number two is, if you're really seeking for a program with diversity, with different background, with conflict, I think EMBA is a place to be, so that you can enjoy the diversity there, as well as you can enjoy the benefit of Chinese EMBA programs.
Thank you, Irene. Boer, anything you would add on that?
Yeah, I would just say it really depends on what you're looking for. In both programs, the accent programs, I personally enjoy EMBA more, like Irene does. And I think it really depends on what question do you have at this phase of your career, what you're looking for. And EMBA certainly give you more global exposure, and the Chinese EMBA certainly give you more. If you want to do sort of startup in the Chinese business environment, maybe that's a better choice. It really depends on what you're looking for.
Great, thank you. Question here. How is the CEIBS program perceived in China versus US or UK programs? Is it more useful to help with the transition to China or Hong Kong for a European? As our European on the panel, Klaus, anything to answer there?
I think I've been quite clear that I see no competition when it comes to that. As you mentioned yourself, it's the highest ranking standalone program. A lot of the other programs, I would say, are more fly-in professors. I don't think they can teach as detailed, as in-depth as professors that stay here. So no, I think it's not a shooting match or competition. I mean, there are many, many excellent schools out there, but if your purpose is really to accelerate your China path, I think CEIBS has a unique position in that respect.
Great, okay, thank you. A question here, are students required to graduate from the program within 2 years? Can I graduate earlier or postpone my study if for work or personal reasons? I can take that. First question, are students required to graduate from the program within 2 years? No, so you do have the option to pause your studies if you wish, if there are some sort of extraordinary circumstances for a year, you can postpone your study and then pick up your studies with the following class. Can you graduate earlier? That's not possible. We don't have any kind of express track or any opportunity to sort of graduate earlier, I'm afraid. I think we may have answered this, but I'm going to, what leadership improvements have you made since the leadership module was completed? Maybe back to you, Klaus. I think you may have touched on it, but if you could go back to that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, as I think I mentioned a little bit in relation to the change of jobs. Specifically, the discussion was not about have you studied an EMBA or CEIBS, but rather Arenco was a company in a situation where I think stagnating has been around for a while, and they wanted to inject new blood, new strategy, new culture, leadership. And so my interview was very much an extension of the things that I had discussed at the school. And I think because of having taken the module, I was able to answer competently about the challenges that I saw, and then also present possible solutions for that. And I think that's the benefit of the program, having I think Louise mentioned this, you get out of your comfort zone, you experience new things. So all of a sudden, when you're in an interview about a new company that might normally scare you or cause you to pause, you have something to fall back on.
Right. Anything from your side there, Irene?
I think
Biggest impact from a leadership perspective?
besides what I talk about, my understanding about leadership, I think most important thing is the best leadership is to be yourself. And the whole journey is to help you to develop a better self. That's the meaning of leadership, I think.
Very good. Okay. Look, unfortunately, we've just run out of time. So we do have a lot more questions that we're not going to be able to answer. Unfortunately, we just don't have time to get through all of them. We've tried to get through as many as we possibly can. So what we do in this case is that if you've asked a question, with your name visible, then what we'll be able to do is to follow up with you directly with an answer, either through email or through a phone call after the webinar. If it's anonymous, then it's a bit difficult for us to reach you. But so what I am suggesting to any of you who would sort of like more information about the program is please feel free to reach me. This is me, Marcel. That's my email at the bottom left there. And this is our website in the middle. Obviously, we have all the information you need there as well. And if you are a user of WeChat, you can scan the QR code there to follow our WeChat account, which I highly recommend. We have sort of events, professors' insights, alumni insights, and so on. So please feel free to submit more questions if you have them. I'm sorry we're not able to get through all of them this evening, but we did our best to get through them. So I want to say a very big thank you to our 4 wonderful panelists. Thank you, all of you. Fantastic to see you all again, even remotely through a screen, but great to see you all again. And really thank you for giving your time. I'm sure very useful to our audience, and it really gives a really full impression of the program. To our audience, thank you very much for listening. We hope that we've given you a really full picture of what the program looks like from the perspective of those who have lived through it. And we really welcome you to reach out to me or reach out to our admissions team to continue the conversation. There's still plenty of time to consider an application for this year. As I mentioned, the next deadline is June 13th. Our final deadline is August 23rd. So still plenty of time to consider an application. Very happy to answer with any more detailed questions about the application process. And yeah, we hope to hopefully see you here on campus one day as a global EMBA student. So thank you all for listening. Thank you once again to the alumni. And as always, hoping that everyone is remaining safe and well and healthy through these COVID-19 times. So thank you, everyone, and have a good evening. Have a good day. Thanks.
Have a good day.
Bye.